everybody, and welcome to the next episode of the Harry Potter Trading Card Game Revival Podcast. My name is Sammy.
I'm Reese.
And I'm woman.
And today we're going to kind of shift a little bit and tone down on some of the design philosophy talk we've been having and shift more to talk about some decks that each of us really enjoys playing, building, talking about whatever, and some cards that we think could help be designed to potentially improve these decks. I do want to say that none of the cards we're talking about that could be improvements for these decks are things that we're actively designing. These are just things that we want personally for these decks that we enjoy. So it'll be kind of a fun conversation, hopefully. And so I'll start with a deck that I love playing a lot, and I just think needs a little bit more to make it a little more competitive and a little more consistent. And that is essentially just a small spell slinger deck. So a bunch of spell cards that cost between like 4 and 6 power, and some combination of either like Quidditch Charms, Potion Quidditch, essentially staying out of Transfiguration and Care of Magical Creatures, and just playing a bunch of these small spells. Some of the cards that are pretty consistent in this type of deck would be stuff like Moody's Eye, that lets you play cards from the top of your deck if they're spells, Dueling Club, which gives you an extra draw at the end of your turn if you've played a spell, and then some type of like low cost card like Depulso that just gives you some type of control within that deck. So those are the ones that like we typically see. And I think that the deck could be improved a little bit to make it actually competitive, because I think it's just lacking some power. And I think it's really replacing the cards in your hand at the end of your turn slows down the consistency of the deck. And I think that's why Moody's Eye was a great card when we designed it in Goblet of Fire, because it kind of gave you an extra card in hand and also let you see what you were drawing, with the downside of your opponent also seeing it, but that is what it is.
Yeah, I think that just lower cost spells don't really have the amount of impact to like action cost required in order to really make them competitive. Because every card that you play is a card that you first have to draw and then have to use an action to play. So like those two costs are what really hold back cards that are just inefficient action wise. And there's not enough in there that's like incentivizing you to do that. I wanted to make something that was going to make that a little bit more competitive. I would look to like I don't know, something like on the Hogwarts Express, but maybe on like a character and then only tied to like low cost spells or something.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the sort of sentiment is that they're a bit too cost heavy, right? So you look at playing maybe 3 or 4 lower cost spells that do 3 damage each, and they can do a total of 12 damage. They've cost you 4 actions. Whereas you play the bigger burn spells, for example, Exploding Charm or Alley Blast, and they'll do 12 damage by themselves. Sure, they cost you a few more lands to get up to that cost, but then when you go to play the next one, Alley Blast or Exploding Charm are still doing 12 damage, whereas the next card off of the small burns is still only doing 3. So the impetus to just get over the mark in Harry Potter is a lot bigger, whereas the small cost spells, they're sort of just become too action intensive by the time you get there. And then like if someone plays Pomfrey, heals up 12, there goes 2-3 of your last turn. So I definitely agree. A big improvement to the spell sling is why there'd be something that gains you actions for playing low cost spells like Hogwarts Express or something like that, or even something that significantly magnifies the damage they do. So I think we have one of the standard book
Yeah,
of spells, right?
grade 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then even with some of the low cost spell slingers, they have like the draw on them. So you could play like Northern Tower or something that,
Oh my God.
effectively does damage. But I'm searching. Oh, I mean, I'm really, really trying.
Yeah. No, North Tower just seems like a really cool thing to try to fold into a deck like this. I actually do really want to see that card played because it's sick, but
Somebody
it's
once had
hard.
a deck, but it was just super janky because you had to just play
Yeah.
bad cards to make North Tower good,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was not working.
Yeah, so there's sort of those cards that magnify the damage they do in a pragmatic sense.
I'm playing around with a Quidditch control build of this because a lot of the Quidditch cards will do damage and then give you
Mhm.
some kind of like tiny tempo, but your opponent gets to choose how that tempo affects them. And it's doing some stuff, but it's just kind of missing some pieces. But I think, Holman, you brought up something with characters. So with all these decks, I think it'd be interesting to say, is there a starter that just slots really well in, or does this deck need a starter to make it better? I don't really know what starter is best for like a small spell slinger deck because there's not really a character other than like Madame Maxime, but she cares about non-damage spells, and that's just a different deck than this one. I just don't think there's currently a starter that really cares about spells in the way that we need to. Maybe Flitwick does, but I don't think that's enough.
That's why I'd like to see maybe on the Hogwarts Express, specifically for small spells on a
Yeah.
starter. Then this deck might start to get a little more competitive. I do think that there's a lot more ways to make up the card draw portion of the cost
Uh-huh.
of the deck right now, rather than, and like very few ways to make up the action portion. You named like Moody's Eye, Dueling Club. These are all very good ways to like keep churning through your deck.
Yeah, even then, even with them replacing themselves, they are action intensive, but they're also like drawing, which is doing damage to you. So like the ratio
Yeah.
is really not great on them.
Maybe they'll never really be a deck, and I will just continue to try to make it a deck because I just like the small spells like Fouled and I don't know, whatever other small spells
Oh,
matter. I guess none really matter other than Fouled, but
I think maybe another good card to chuck in them would be something that prevents your opponent from healing on the next turn. Because
mm,
any setback on the healing
yeah.
would really like damages the progress they can make, and it takes so much more off of them than it ever costs normally. So like yeah, just like a little like the potions cards that like do 4 damage and your opponent can't play characters next turn or can't play items
mm.
next turn, have something similar. It's just like do 4 damage, your opponent cannot shuffle cards into their deck, or something like Chamber of Secrets basically on a spell.
Yeah,
Yeah,
chamber like stinging scar, like something that punishes them for the healing. Still, yeah, I don't
that
know.
seems
It's
pretty
it's
cool.
definitely a pipe dream that I would love to see a small spell slinger deck work. Maybe one day it will. Maybe we just need more of these Quidditch cards to have like a transfiguration component to them. Maybe it'll never happen, but I'm gonna make it happen, and I'm gonna keep
Yeah,
trying
it's
and
okay.
failing, and that's fine.
I played actually a small spell slinger deck in a tournament once. It was my
Oh, the
Shanks
Quidditch one?
PQ. Yeah, Hufflepuff
Yeah.
match one. That was cool.
I think the thing that like makes that different is that relied on the match to be in play
Yeah.
as opposed to like just spells, which is fine.
Yeah, well, Hufflepuff match was basically just another damage spell.
Yeah.
Because it's so consistent at activating it, unless they had something like 12 years or something. But also, I don't think it was too strong. Like, it can take games off of decks that are not really prepared for it, but just
Yeah.
by sheer power of racing. But also, it was really weak to the lesson control that was going on at that time.
Oh, yeah.
It just can't deal with losing 2 lessons. A single invisible ink and the deck just folds. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's tight.
Well, my deck was a small spell slinger. What's a deck that one of you two have that's not a small spell slinger deck?
I've been playing around a little bit with Moonlit Transformation and Abraxan. I kind of want to see this deck work. So basically, it runs Moonlit Transformation, it runs Abraxan, as the name suggests, to try to combo these to get Abraxan out early. Usually, what you're doing is you're pitching Pomfrey off of Moonlit Transformation so that you can heal another 12 when you play another Pomfrey and get out another Abraxan. And then oftentimes, the way that you get Pomfrey out is you play Night Bus with usually Dragonheart Wand that ramps you from 5 to 8, and then you play Night Bus, pulls out Pomfrey for free, and then you play Moonlit Transformation. I currently think that the deck is probably missing some just like strong generic control cards to really try to control the board. Like Scribblefors was lost, which was just very, very strong and efficient and generic. And maybe something that's like more fetch or tutor, like a card that could get you all the pieces that you need in one action would be really nice for it.
That'd be a very strong card.
I mean, something that's like 6 cost or like 7 cost that just fetches a spell and a creature would be really nice. Because we
Well,
have like
isn't
cards
their
that
spell
fetch two
item?
creatures.
Isn't like inheriting the map a spell and an item? Which is not what you
Yeah, but
want,
that's
right?
yeah, it's 2 actions as well to fetch both of them, which is kind of rough in a deck that usually doesn't run extra action. And there's not really like a good starter for the deck either. It's kind of just play a professor and then shrug.
I would say the deck feels very similar to a popular Magic the Gathering deck called Show and
Hmm.
Tell, which is pretty similar to the same thing. It's you
Hmm.
put a huge creature into play using a spell that costs a lot less. And I think the things that deck tends to have is lots of draw or card selection,
Hmm.
disruption for your opponent, so ways to stop them stopping you, which seems like is potentially a thing here as well. And then creatures that are super, super impactful the moment they hit the board. In the Magic the Gathering deck, you have a creature that gives you another turn, that straight up draws you 7 cards, or one that makes your opponent discard a creature, draw a card, you draw a card, they lose life. Is like a whole bunch of things. So the Abraxan is a really good step forward, I think, in making Moonlit Transformation something that works really well. But the pieces it could use, it could just be disruption. We have in our game, that moment between when you get a creature in play and when it becomes effective by passing to your next turn, and it can do damage and stuff like that. So maybe it's just a creature that's really impactful for a high cost, or it does something that immediately affects the board, either stopping you from losing or really progressing your win.
Yeah, because sometimes 17 damage is just not enough when you're
Not quite enough.
losing the next turn.
Yeah, as silly as it sounds, 17 damage is still only, almost just over a quarter of the deck. So it's not necessarily game finishing.
So would a creature, a bit of a spoiler for the upcoming set, but there is a creature that when it comes into play removes a particular type of card. So would you want this kind of disruption tied to a creature, since the deck is like a creature transfig thing, or would you want it to just be a transfig card that is the disruption itself?
I would personally like to see it on a large creature. Something that like hits the board and then answers threats while being a threat itself would be really nice.
Would that just replace Abraxan though, or would that be...
I mean, I think you're probably running both. Like, one of the problems with the deck is also that it only has 4 targets for Moonlit Transformation if you're running 4 Abraxans. If you're just like randomly lose all your Abraxans, you just lose.
Yeah. And then if your discard pile gets locked behind like a chamber or something, then yeah, you are really screwed.
Yeah, you just lose.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay. But I mean, that's also life decking in general with combo decks. Yeah, it's height.
I played against the deck a couple of times, and it definitely sucks when you do get hit with 17 damage and you can kind of see it coming, but then maybe you don't see it coming if there's like not the palm free on board, and then they play the night bus into the moonlit. And one turn you're like, oh, okay, that just happened. But I will say the times I played it, and I have played it with my small spell deck, it's kind of split 50-50 with who wins. Like, it just takes so much longer to get up to that power sometimes. Or if I have disruption, like as you said, it does just slow it down so much.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll get something, maybe it won't, but
Yeah,
we'll see.
I certainly don't know.
Riss, do you have a deck?
I think for my favorite deck, the first one at least I want to talk about would be the base set, or the traditional Draco VTJ. It's one I've built in real life, and it sort of plays into the things I like about card games quite a bit. So the common cards you've seen are obviously VTJ, Venomous Tentacular Juice, is a combo card that tries to win the game on the spot, stops your opponent from interacting. But a lot of the rest of the deck is about slowing your opponent down and speeding yourself up to being able to cast VTJ. So it uses Draco as the starter, and then it plays a lot of the 2 power books that provide a lesson as sort of a free lesson on a turn, because Draco getting back the extra action from playing an item. Other cards that use Self-Stirring Cauldron pushes you just a little bit further, sort of as a power ramp. And then Hannah Abbott as redundancy if your VTJs get put into the discard pile, or you need to reuse one you've just cast, for example. And then some cards to slow your opponent down would be stuff like Caught by Snape, which is banned in Revival, but still around in the base, and Picking on Neville, Scribble 4s, that sort of thing. So it's got a bit of everything. Draw from the books, ramp, removal pieces, control pieces with Caught by Snape, and a combo finish. So it's got a bit of everything, and I really like that sort of thing in card games.
And I think one of the interesting things with your deck, I think compared to all the decks we'll talk about today, is you can build it strictly with classic cards. I don't really think you need to run any revival cards, and the deck can function. The only one copy of VTJ, it is helpful if you can like tutor it up or use a 3 turns or something. But there's other ways to do it, and it's just unique in our decks today because of that.
Yeah, I mean, the single copy of VTJ does hurt, but there are other ways to get it back. I mean, you can play Charms or something like that, Hannah Abbott is the main way, because even in the classic format, you'd use Hannah Abbott maybe as you play one VTJ and then you use her ability to get that same VTJ back, or you extend into a third VTJ by using her as well. So yeah, pretty easy to play with just the classic cards.
I also would
Also,
like to say that, unlike the other decks that we've talked about, this deck is actually viable in a tournament setting.
yeah.
I think
The
that it doesn't actually need anything else to be competitively a top tier deck.
I would
Agreed.
strongly disagree with that.
Really?
I
Really?
I would I'd say the dependence on a single copy of VTJ is much more harmful in our game than saying this is a competitive deck would lead to people to believe. I
Uh,
think if you're gonna run search cards, you're dipping into a third color makes you less consistent, and that third color being charms, with the
Well,
base one being transfiguration potions.
you don't actually need to. You have inheriting the map, right? That just finds
yeah.
VTJ.
Oh, that does now, right? Yeah, sorry, I'm thinking of
Yeah,
O5 only.
yeah,
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 okay,
yeah.
that's
Expand
better.
into revival.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You could make it
Es-
competitive revival, make use revival cards. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
especially
okay.
if you're only running one VTJ, you should
Yeah.
be running revival cards.
Yeah, inheriting the map's better. You still need a way to get it back as well, I think.
Yeah,
So,
and that's
I would concede that it's probably not as bad as I th thought it was off the top of my head now, but still one copy is never does the job with VTJ.
I do think that, well, I've played Revival VTJ post like restriction a couple of times, and I felt like it was still pretty decent. A lot more shaky, but pretty decent still.
Yeah,
And
it
you
definitely
just,
still wins games. And I think it's really hard to interact with like these other things. Your Braxton, for example, if I sideboard in a Walden, your Braxton's kind of shut down.
excuse me, I love my Moonlit transformation hitting for two instead of 7/10.
Sorry, yeah. But yeah, like, and then even the Spellslinger deck, like you can play through the Arch or something, and that really shuts down the deck. And then there's other things to shut down these other decks, but stopping card draw, that's really what Lockhart's Office and Essential Knowledge Test. And outside of that, there's no real like counter to VTJ. So it's strong, it's great, it does the thing really, really well. Maybe
Disgusting. I feel so grody when I play VTJ. Ugh. So I don't play this deck, but maybe I'll play it in the next tournament or something just to show you how like
well, and I think we were
competitively
having a
viable.
conversation about this. This was like 2 or 3 years ago, women, and we were talking about how like on turn three with
Mhm.
starting Draco, you could get out BTJ because of like self-stirring cauldron and the extra actions
Sure.
and everything, and it can just come out so early. You need other
Yeah,
stuff
that's
to
not
make
really
it
a
effective,
problem.
but
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if getting out turn three is really a problem. Like, I think this is probably a great area to discuss as far as design is concerned too, because a VTJ on turn three makes your opponent draw like what, 12 cards? And then you've got to somehow follow that up on the next turn. And
Um,
suddenly they're picking on Neville, your self-stirring cauldron, and you're like, oh well, shit.
yeah, the game's over. I do think that, yeah, if you're playing VTJ on turn three, you need to be playing two VTJs on turn three, which
Yes,
is
exactly. Yeah.
currently extremely hard to do.
well, charms and start running Dobby's Help, and Gringotts Keep, and then you have your
Yeah,
searcher, and you can have him draw an extra 10. Not
yeah.
fantastic, but you would have to shift the colors of the deck.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just like Dobby's help in VTJ.
Oh,
But
that's like the original classic was those two.
yeah,
Yeah,
but you
before
could
people
also just
realize you
win
didn't
with,
need it.
Yeah,
I think drawing 8 times your hand size is usually you're dead.
Yeah.
usually. Well, VTJ is definitely a powerful deck, and I don't think it's going to go away. I think it'll only get a little better here and there as we design more stuff, which is pretty cool. Or, I don't know. My second deck that I enjoy playing that is nowhere near as competitive as VTJ and is quite shitty compared to VTJ is starting Professor Lockhart and doing some kind of like hand discard shenanigan thing to try to use Lockhart to just make your opponent discard their hand and make their choices much more difficult. It is just pretty inconsistent and not great. I usually run stuff like impromptu inspection so I can draw my opponent's turn and trigger Lockhart on my opponent's turn. And then there's other like random ways to discard cards like Beater's Bat or Draco Malfoy, the original one, or like Seamus or something. But then you get into this situation of like, should I just start Seamus and not Lockhart? And then it just makes the whole Lockhart idea useless. But Goblet of Fire also gave us the wit sharpening suite of cards, which cares about about when stuff is discarded. So that's also kind of nice. And that can help place cards in your hand and do some stuff. But it's just not giving the deck what it really needs. And I think it just needs, if you start Lockhart, more consistent ways turn 1 to turn Lockhart on. Because waiting until turn 2, usually 3, is usually just not good enough with Lockhart. And at that point, just start Seamus or something else.
I know we were talking the other day, these are spoilers for R&D calls, but we were talking the other day about like cards that maybe you would discard cards instead of paying the power costs for them. Other like alternative costs for cards that would be pretty strong in Lockhart. Just ways that you can turn him on turn 1
Yeah.
are really and like efficiently continue
Yes.
to keep using him after turn 1, like turn after turn, is probably something that he needs.
Well, that and to make sure that all the things you do that you're doing are still progressing you winning the game and is not just making the game halt. Because if you're just discarding stuff and the game's halting and you're not actually like progressing, what's the point? Why are you playing this deck at that point? So, and that's
Yeah.
really hard to balance at a low cost. Maybe the discard as an alt cost will be a way that we can figure that out. And maybe Lockhart will just forever be the bridesmaid and never the bride.
Lockhart as a bridesmaid or a bride does not. These are some not good pictures in my mind.
Yeah.
With that smile, how could you not think of it, eh?
He's a smarmy person.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much more to say about that particular deck because it just kind of is what it is, but it will forever be something I will strive to try to make work and will never work.
Also, I think that like where's the payoff for hand control anymore? Like with
Yeah.
letters from no one gone, you can't really capitalize on them losing a lot of cards anymore as well. So maybe it's something else that like helps with that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not something as oppressive as letters from no one anymore, but like,
Yeah.
that's what I have to say.
But anyway, there are definitely more decks that are much more interesting than the Lockhart one to talk about.
Wow, stop being so
Listen,
down on
I
Lockhart.
I love the Lockhart deck. I just understand that it will always be like tier 5.
Wow, you're a designer, Sammy. Make it tier 1.
Listen, I've been trying. It's just not working.
Yeah, Lockhart just needs too many things, I think.
Yeah, agreed.
Maybe there's a starting character that's like, if this is your starting character, put Lockhart into play. And
Maybe,
then does
yeah.
something where you have like partner commanders. You can have partner starting characters.
I'm pretty sure we already have that with Hermione Spew.
Yeah, but she doesn't do anything else except fetch.
Yeah, not
monsters.
really.
Yeah.
Not really partner.
So we make a new Hermione that's like Hermione fangirl, and she starts Lockhart, and then she also does something with lessons, and they just destroy you. Perfect.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good. Let's print it.
Every time you discard a card, put a lesson in play from your deck or something. Yeah, perfect. Mega
No,
array.
whenever you discard a lesson card from your hand, put it into play.
Easy, done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Send it.
Moving on from Lockhart, second deck I wanted to talk about is a very funny deck. I don't think it's also competitively viable. It's Pumpkin Patch Creatures. You can see possibly a theme going on here with the decks I've chosen. But
Which is weird
anyways,
because you normally don't really play creatures often. I usually see you play stuff that is more like character control-y stuff. I don't see you playing creatures as often.
This is wild. This is also slander. My first tournament deck was a creature deck.
Oh, like 5 years ago? I don't remember that.
Yeah, holy shit, 5 years ago.
Yeah, 5
Oh.
years ago. Long time.
Yeah, anyways, maybe I should put that on there. It was a Adventure lock deck or Adventure creature deck from the time when Fred and George was banned as a starter, which was an interesting time. And I'm not sure
Yeah.
why I decided to play a deck where their best starter got banned, but it is what it is. The deck runs like Pumpkin Patch, usually Fluffy, and then Scabbers Return to just get like this 21 HP meat shield on the board over and over again whenever they kill him. Usually it runs stuff like Security Troll, or it also needs like ways to get its lessons back from the discard pile. So I think my current build is running Hermione Overworked Student just to not like lose all your lessons and then cry, because Security Troll discards them, Fluffy discards them.
This is starting to sound like Rowena might be a good starter to test out.
Maybe. Man, I really wish for those days where Rowena was 5 and instead of Scrib.
And she was very powerful. You know,
She
honestly,
was too good.
had Scribbleforce and like that suite of cards got banned back in June. Had that been banned when we were making this, maybe she would have been 5 because I think that was one of the cards that we talked about in regards to making her too strong.
Yeah, when you like research into Scribblefores or Invisible Ink, it's pretty rough.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
research. It was pushing it over just a little bit.
Yeah, but also like
Yeah, but she is play a card, so she would be a way when you just play Fluffy to get a lesson back. Not a bad
yeah,
idea.
been nice.
And she
But
will just replace it with Security Troll too. Yeah, that's pretty cool actually.
yeah, it's like but yeah, I
Invisibility
think
potion. That's a great way to protect the creatures.
I have problems with the card. You're like you play it and you're doing nothing with your action and it feels really bad.
I mean, you're doing 12 damage with Fluffy next turn. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, I was gonna say on the hindsight, if your opponent removes Fluffy, then what you're doing is you've played a second Fluffy for one lesson.
Well, you're not actually because they're not playing the removal and they're waiting for you to for your invis potion to go away. Unless you're like chaining invis potions for the rest of your life, which might that's fine, I guess. Maybe you go that direction.
I mean, if they're waiting until they're dead and then they play the removal, it doesn't matter to me. I've won.
Yeah, but like
Yeah, it can be a little
maybe.
bit card in invested.
Yeah, I might think about that. Maybe starting like Haggard or something to get your lessons back. Then you can run Unicorn, maybe. I don't know.
I think Ravenclaw's
Something to
better
think
to
about.
run because she just puts it, well, she puts a different one into play, I guess. She doesn't put it back into play. Hagrid doesn't either, I guess, but
Yeah, but Haggard you could also run stuff like Time Turner,
oh, that's
which
true.
is
Yeah.
really good with him.
Fills
Yeah.
your hand up for invisibility potion, right? Puts more back in your hand.
Yeah,
Interesting.
because that's also a problem. But yeah, I think protection for large creatures would be good. Maybe invisibility potion.
I mean, if you're gonna
Protection
go
for
the
your
for
Mhm.
Pumpkin Patch, because I think I played against you at least once with this deck, and somebody else had
Yeah.
built a similar deck, and it turned
Mhm.
into a war over who could play their card and make it stay in play. And I don't remember what I was playing, but I kept discarding Pumpkin Patch, and then you would keep playing your Pumpkin Patch, and like it was
Yeah.
this back and forth. We have
Mhm.
Unplottable now. Is that the card?
Yeah.
Which could help
Yeah.
a lot with that.
Yeah, so maybe it's like the deck transitions into potions creatures with unplottable plus invisibility potion. Yeah.
Well, because it's currently creatures. What is, or is it just creatures?
It's currently just creatures. Like
Okay.
I think it's transfig because you just like play the
Removal
generic strong
pieces.
transfig removal
That's
Yeah.
fair. Yeah.
and call it a day. There's just like not too much synergy going on between potions and creatures.
You could also play what is it? Squid Tentacles?
Oh, I guess that's a card now.
But that's helping
Wow.
you with potion lessons, not with creature lessons. So is
Yeah.
it really helping? I don't know. It is 6
Uh,
costs though, so it would trigger Ravenclaw if you did starter.
oh God. We're doing the Ravenclaw start now.
It's not a bad idea. It's not a bad
It's
idea.
okay.
It's
It's
an
okay, I
idea.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fine. And then also the other way I think that it would be improved is ways to get larger creatures out easier. Something akin to Moonlit Transformation, where you could just like plop down something big
Or
without paying for
fertilizer.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Interesting.
have problems with fertilizer, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's an
Well,
interesting card.
yeah, and I think in the set after the upcoming one, we are talking about adding in dragons because it's going to be about the Triwizard Tournament. And in theory, we're going to have some large dragons in that set, I assume, and maybe ways to
Yeah.
make dragons more playable, which in turn might just make big creatures more playable as a whole.
Which might make Pumpkin Patch more playable. Who knows? We were just
Uh,
talking about large creatures that when they hit the board, like do some
Mhm.
threat removal, which would be nice and be cool to see on a dragon. But spoiler alert, none of these have been designed as of yet.
Yeah,
So,
not a single dragon.
though there is currently a card that is designed that cheats out creatures. So look forward to that. If it
Yeah.
stays like that, like a year from now when it's released. Jeez.
A year's a long time.
Well, another thing from that as well is you don't necessarily care about big creatures. You just want something that's got a lot of health, right?
Yeah, actually, we just need another thing that has a lot of health that's not fluffy. That's also a problem.
I mean, there
So
is
just
one of
make
those
like
that's
a
designed.
you could make like a I don't know a 6 cost 0/30.
What a wild card.
Strictly to combo with patch. No other reason.
No other reason. Oh, I mean,
Right.
I'm sure our players are inventive and can come up with something one day, maybe.
Yeah.
It'll be like Hedge Maze. It'll be a 0/30 that like is just a plant. It just doesn't do anything else.
Oh, that's brewing some cards right there. What have we got? We got forks though as well, right? Is that any?
No,
It's
we
still
don't have anything
12
like that.
cost. Nah, it's not big health anyway. It's trying to do the same thing though, just worse.
But yeah,
Anyways,
pumpkin patch could
Riss.
happen. So
Oh,
we'll see.
yeah, I could.
My second deck is character control. It a little bit
So,
out of the blue. This
wait.
is not something I've ever played, and it's what
I need to
Plumbin
just,
has played and didn't put it
yeah,
on his own
no,
list.
I need to make a statement here first that you can see a theme with all of these decks that people are choosing. Sammy's is like extreme jank, never gonna see play,
Yeah.
needs like 700 things to work. Mine are like, let's play big creatures really early. And
With
then
like some
Riss is
kind of
just
combo E.
yeah. And Riss is all of his choices are just competitively viable.
Well, we cover every basis then. What
We
is it?
do.
It's like we got our Timmy, we got our Spike, and we got our Johnny. You know, we've got every single design
That's very true.
Yeah,
space covered.
amazing.
Character control. So I think the version of character control I like the most is probably not something that's been played in a tournament yet, but the love for the character control deck really comes from the fact that my style of board game playing actually. So I play a lot of board games and I tend to enjoy engine builders. So things where you slowly play out your cards and they make the actions you take more and more powerful. There's probably quite a few famous board games that do this sort of thing. I think if anyone's played Wingspan before, it's a
Was
game
gonna
of
say
yeah,
Wingspan.
Yep.
it's a game about birds, but that's an engine builder, quite a straightforward one, but it does the same thing. It's the pieces slowly played out to make your actions stronger and stronger. The biggest thing that sort of joins in with this is the diversity of action choice too. So it's not just build towards funneling your actions into one particular thing, like Spell Slinger, for example, but it's a wide range of things like doing damage, interacting with your opponents, drawing cards, getting card selection. So quite a few of those aspects. Same with the Draco deck that I quite like. But when you have pieces already on the board that you can just continually activate that does that sort of thing for you. For example, Colin, Seamus, that sort of, draw you cards, get you more actions, even though they're not overly impactful strictly by themselves. Lots of that repeated over lots of turns is the thing I like about it. So
I have to bring up Wingspan. Well, it's just solitaire. Like if I wanted to play a one-player game, I would not bring four other people to play a one-player game with me.
You don't like Wingspan? Wingspan's great.
Yeah, I don't like Wingspan.
Wow,
I
that's a
think
hot take. That is a hot take.
I don't think it's a hot take. I think there's
It's
just
one
not
of the most
enough.
popular games to come out over the past like 3, 4 years,
Yeah,
whatever it's
I
been.
know. I don't know
yeah.
why.
Because it's
It's
fun. It's a good game.
no, it's literally four-player solitaire.
I disagree with that. It's very close to solitaire, but there are
Yeah,
a lot of interactions that can
but
happen.
there's just not enough interaction to make me
Yeah,
happy.
I definitely understand that. But like as far as engine builders,
Yeah,
it's
it's the most iconic right now.
yes, and
Um,
it's that for a lot of reasons. I think the theme with the
the
birds
theme is
resonates with
good.
a lot of
Yeah,
people that aren't heavy gamers. And then
yeah,
also it's very simple. It's literally four actions and all of them
yeah.
sort of play into the same thing. So yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, I don't think it's literally solitaire, but it is pretty close. The more
Yeah.
interactive engine builders may be something that is also drafting. Seven Wonders is a board game I love to death. And
Yeah, it
that's
is
sort
fun.
of, yeah,
Yeah.
building your engine up over, rounds 1 and 2 to really go off in round 3 and
Weird.
see what direction you've gone.
I would
But
never classify Seven Wonders as an engine building game. But
I,
yeah,
I would
okay.
I would say definitely not primarily. It is a
Yeah.
drafter, but you do need to build your engine. And are you going resource heavy or are you going
Tech
go
tree, yeah.
tech tree heavy? Are you which direction are you
Yeah.
going in the science points or military, that sort of thing? So yeah, I definitely is a sub theme, not the main theme. Drafting being the main one there as well, but yeah, that would be a more interactive one.
Yeah, with your characters, I think that Rita probably gave them like the last big thing they needed, just that consistency on board to do damage if necessary. I
Hmm.
mean,
Yes, and
we even saw with the last tournament that was one of the ways that it won against the deboning Hogwarts History lock deck. Having Rita out is how that deck really won because the deck couldn't deal with Rita and whatever the other card was. Oh, it was Rita and Oliver Wood. And that was what pushed the deck over the edge.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think Reader is a great piece. I think after some balancing, like I don't know if characters will ever be hit by the ban list or need some sort
Yeah.
of balance. But if they were, they would need a little bit of help in, I think, the win con space. So Reader and Griphook being I think the two main ones, would you say, Huamin? You played it in the last.
Yeah. Nah, the main when I played it, the main win con was Hagrid needs help and grip hook.
Yeah, which is not
Hagrid
not
doesn't exist
well,
anymore.
yeah, it doesn't
Um,
exist. It's sort of it needs a bit more to push it over the line, I think. And
yeah, possibly. Maybe
yeah,
we'll see some more like actually playable Quidditch positions. So when you're fetching them out, then like you're actually progressing your win con instead of or progressing your win con and having some benefit to your game plan rather than just trying to assemble Exodia.
yeah, so I say character control resonates with my board game geek side of engine building, but it also resonates with the main Magic the Gathering format I play, which is Legacy, and my favorite deck from that, which is the Lands deck. So I think the old
Mhm.
style, trying to assemble Oliver Wood in a win con, it's a bit more fragile, like what the old Legacy Lands deck used to be, which was play some interesting lands that summon out one creature that wins the game in one turn, is very susceptible to having all that effort put into this one creature that comes out now just getting removed or stopped somehow. That deck has progressed into a deck that far more consistently gets out some mid-range creatures and wins that way. And it's
Yeah.
sort of not like put a little stick in the spokes of the wheels and the whole thing falls apart anymore. I think Reader
Mhm.
leans more towards that side. It may not win you that turn, but it's not fragile like what Oliver is. So
Yeah.
you can just do it a couple times, and even if it's interacted with, go back and do it again.
Also, possibly the only thing that might happen with like ban list is Ron might go back on ban list. I don't think he will, but like
I
it's
mean,
possible.
that was a big conversation with the ban list in 2025, and then we pulled them off last minute, I think.
Wait, you mean 2024?
Oh my
2025
God, we're in 20.
talks haven't
Yeah, that's what it.
started
Yeah,
yet.
correct. Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I'm not sure about Ron going in or coming off because it is also fragile and depending on what kind of
Yeah.
removal we create for characters, if we create anything that might help balance stuff too. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, I don't mind where the deck is right now. I think
Yeah,
it's in a good spot. It's balanced. It's like, it's
yeah.
not oppressive or anything like that. And the answers to it are like, yeah, sure, you have to go out of your way to play them, but also the answers to the character control deck are very, very, very strong against the character control deck.
Yeah.
Particularly, most character control decks are running probably less than 15 lessons, so Potions Project is very strong against them, and then Misbrewed Polyjuice just whacks them for like
Oh,
15
love
or something.
Misbrewed so much.
Yeah, and then
Love
the
that
second
card.
one just wins the game. So
Uh-huh.
like you can tech against it. It's decent.
All the answers sounding like they're in potions though, so I mean there's
Yeah,
restrictions on that side if you're playing mono Quidditch.
yeah, sure. Mono Quidditch isn't gonna have great answers to it. It's okay. Like the deck also just doesn't run very many lessons, so if you're hitting them with like star charts or something early, that can really slow them down. Or an early foul to stop them from playing their Ron is also extremely strong.
Yeah.
Or like if you have a way to interact with if they're running the Fat Lady, like if you can interact with that early on with something like Vanishing Referee, that can also screw them over. Yeah,
I mean, we'll
you've got
definitely see what
options in
comes
Mono
out with the
Quidditch.
next set and what Quidditch can do with characters after the next set.
So
Yeah. Any last thoughts about any of the decks or anything? Or
I think in the future there's probably quite a bit of improvement on the horizon for a lot of these decks that we talked about. Maybe not the Lockhart deck, but I think the Moonlit Transformation with Abraxan that has some things just over the horizon. The Draco deck might be getting a little bit of help in the next set, indirectly. Spellslinger, the same thing with maybe a bit of a spoiler here, but a new match coming out. Maybe that's another one that can help out quite a bit there. Yeah,
That's true.
I don't know about that.
maybe.
It can improve their action situation, I think.
Yeah, but
And
17 is so much to help that small Spellslinger deck. I don't know.
hey, it's still in the design space. So
It is. It
yeah.
is.
and with Fouled, it can get there a lot quicker than what your opponents can. So anyway, even the character control deck might be getting a little bit of things to explore in the next set and the set after. So a lot of these decks have some room for improvement to come, but the cavalry is just around the corner.
You know, most of the spoiler alert, a lot of like the character space for the QWC also hasn't been solidified yet, right?
Yeah.
So where's my small spell slinger starting character?
Listen,
It
I
actually fits
don't
in with the
know.
themes of like some of the colors, right? I think that'd be a great place to explore.
Thank you everybody for listening. A real quick plug. We will be having a tournament in February, probably toward the end of February. So if you're interested in playing, make sure you are building a deck and ready to join us for that and join our Discord in order to play in the tournament. And I'm sure we'll have a conversation sometime in the next month as a podcast episode talking about what we expect or just tournament stuff in general. So tune in for that as well. Follow all of our socials linked below. And thank you all for listening. See ya.
Peace.
Says.